So you may have seen polyglots from all over the world, seamlessly switching in between different languages, acting confident, and you might be just over here in the corner just struggling still. And you're wondering, are there any secrets they might have? Now, after a decade of working hard to become a polyglot myself, I discovered that polyglots definitely do have some secrets, but most of them are probably not what you would expect. Now, the first secret is the most important polyglot secret of them all, and to be honest, every other secret is linked to this first one, and it is every successful polyglot knows themselves deeply as a learner. And this isn't necessarily connected to them having special access to a magical method, a strategy, or a planner that others cannot access equally. It means they know what works for them and when, what doesn't work and when, what languages to start and when. They're familiar with their common mental roadblocks they face, and they know how to get through them efficiently. So those blocks no longer hold them back, and they know how much adaptability, flexibility, or inflexibility they might need when they do feel stuck, something isn't working, or they just generally feel uninspired. So they know themselves deeply as a learner because they understand their whole learning process. And it does take time and experience to figure this out for ourselves. And I will say, knowing myself deeply as a learner doesn't mean that I know myself fully, right? And I actually accept that I never will. We always evolve as learners, as humans behind the languages that we are learning. In saying that, I'm not afraid to put myself in very new, uncomfortable situations in order to keep learning more about myself, about my ever-evolving language learning process, how I learn best as a learner, and actually scratch that. I am sometimes definitely afraid. However, I don't let the fear block me from doing what I know I need to do in order to get to my goals and fulfill my purpose in life, which I truly believe is expressing myself and being of service to other people through language learning. So that means I up and just went to Turkey. It took 3 months out of my life to learn Turkish and immerse myself in Istanbul, a country that I just didn't know, and I wasn't even fluent in Turkish before I actually got there. So that was really scary. And honestly, with every experience that I allow myself to have, I would say that I actually go into those experiences with more curiosity instead of criticism. And I know in the end, whatever happens, I'm going to add another layer of nuance about how I see myself as a language learner. Polyglots knowing themselves well, how their personality fits into the language, how their language learning process is for them. They're naturally, as a byproduct of this, going to show up with more confidence, more joy, and more consistency in what they are doing. I coach language learners, by the way, to reach this level of confident fluency. So make sure you book a free discovery call down below if you're interested, and or you can also join the waitlist to hop on my group coaching program that I'm opening doors very soon to. Another polyglot secret that I've noticed is I know my language learning season and I align it with my energy. What does that mean exactly? So in terms of language learning seasons, before we even go into this, remind ourselves that we are not robots in learning a language, machines of constant output. Before I even understood the concept of what a language learning season was, I was obsessed with just collecting languages as if it was money, and that I needed to learn each one of them as fast as possible. And it really burned me out over years. When I noticed I was learning slower than usual, I sometimes quickly fell into a hole of despair where I told myself, Emily, you're never gonna learn fast again. But what I started to see is that language learning comes in cycles. So one season is called fast progress. If you were to assign a color to this season, it would definitely be red because it is very loud, right? Your progress is very noticeable to you and is probably noticeable to others. And a good example that really embodies this language learning season well is seeing someone on YouTube announcing that they have, I don't know, learned Spanish in 6 months or something like that, right? They've learned really fast and they can clearly see their progress, others can see it, etc. Now, the pros of this are pretty obvious, but the con is that no one will be able to sustain that. Now, on the other side of the coin, we have gradual growth season. And if you were to associate it more with a color, I would say more of a gentle green. It's a steadier season. It's a quieter season. Maybe you're not noticing progress as fast as you were in the fast progress season. Maybe other people are not acknowledging your language learning accomplishments as much as they were in your fast season. And you might just overall notice that your progress is slower. But I will say the pro of this is that it is sustainable for all of us. And then of course we have the restorative rest season, season where we might decide to just take a full break from language learning in general, like I did for a year, or you might just decide to take a complete break from one of your languages if you're learning multiple ones. But the secret to this is I recognize that learning is not linear, right? It's a cycle. And there will be times that every single language learner must go through all 3 cycles again and again. And each season can last for different amounts of time, either from 1 day to years on end. And if you're learning multiple languages, again, you might be in different seasons with each of these languages as well. This was a huge mindset shift for me that allowed me to be more patient in my slower season, or take breaks and go into my restorative rest season without so much guilt about doing so and not being so productive, because I know the fast progress season will always find me again. The next polyglot secret is every polyglot knows when to quit. And honestly, they've probably quit already a lot of things in their learning. In fact, I remember this year, I actually did not take my C1 exam for Turkish, even though I had paid a lot of money for it, even though I went to the country and spent a lot of money to get to travel there and pay for accommodation there, all for being able to take this course in person. I just knew it wasn't aligned to my goals anymore. But it's so important to let go of what is no longer serving you in your learning. And I know this is harder done than said. And maybe you're not necessarily thinking about ending a course or a really expensive program, but you can also see this show up about the desire of not wanting to quit when maybe you're a perfectionist and you really like to go through every single page of a textbook, every single paragraph, feeling that you have to learn every single word, so much to the point of starting to equate finishing a resource with making progress, even though doing the full resource, doing the full program, whatever it is, actually didn't serve your personal goals. Or you just didn't enjoy doing it, but you kept doing it anyway, and now you feel even more exhausted from finishing something that you didn't enjoy. But when you really start to quit even small things that don't serve you in your language learning, right? Maybe that equates to not doing something that you planned for a certain day in your weekly routine because you're tired, you're low energy, or skipping a whole chapter in your textbook because it's not relevant to the themes that you want to learn about and talk about in your target language. That is perfectly fine. And you'll probably start to find as well that resources won't have as much of control over you. Resources just merely present the language to me, and I have full control, full autonomy over how I engage. And I can pause or start according to what I want and not what I think I must do. The next polyglot secret that you might want to try out for yourself is setting intentions instead of expectations. Expectations don't really allow us flexibility. An expectation is what you want. It can also sometimes be based on the actions or the decisions of others, which can often lead to disappointment and discouragement fast in our learning if we aren't careful. On the other hand, intention, it is more empowering and it is based on an internal commitment to yourself. I did exactly this when I was going to an Arabic meetup, and I was really nervous because I hadn't spoken Arabic in about a year and a half. I definitely didn't do any sort of warm up, any input for going to the meetup, and I decided instead to set just an intention of learning one new thing from each person I talked with. I could have set the expectation of wanting to speak in Arabic at the level that I used to be at 1.5 years ago, but that would have just led to disappointment again. If I didn't set really anything at all, then I knew my default thinking would go to expectation. So practicing setting intention is a wonderful gateway to my next polyglot secret. And that is keeping curiosity alive. You know, I've learned to ask more questions and keep asking them, even when the language learning journey gets challenging. And honestly, curiosity is the tool that successfully guides building and carrying out intention, creating language projects, putting our mental roadblocks in our learning behind us, practically everything that we've talked about in this video. It's also the key to getting unstuck. I get curious instead of critical about aspects in my learning that are making me frustrated. For example, instead of telling myself, I have to speak like a native Italian right now with a perfect accent, instead I would say, I wonder what other regional accents exist in Italy. When I was listening to that video, I wonder why that speaker used the subjunctive in Italian in that specific way. I've never seen it before. Let me go down a rabbit hole and research about it. And by simply asking more questions, we can learn from a place of desire. I want to know about this, instead from a place of resistance. I have to do this and this in order to get X result. Underneath all the beautiful note-taking and confident talking to others lies a kind of self-trust that is abstract and not as measurable as your daily streak on Duolingo is, but will make all the difference in how you show up and how much more of a better language learner you can become. And I want to know now in the comments below, which was your favorite polyglot secret to learn about? Let me know, and I'll see you in our next video soon.